I took the job in early November when the last of the migratory birds had already gone south and the ground was starting to harden. The pay was better than anything I could find near home, and the isolation didn't bother me. I had student loans that made decisions for me. The refuge covered 4,800 acres of boreal forest and wetlands along the northern border, far enough from anything that the grocery run took 3 hours round trip. The previous ranger had left suddenly, according to the district supervisor who met me at the gate. Medical leave, she said, though she didn't elaborate. She handed me 2 keys on a faded lanyard, a radio clip to Channel 7 and a 3-ring binder with laminated pages. The ranger station was a small log structure with a wood stove, a cot, a desk, and a wall of windows facing the main trail. The windows had heavy canvas curtains on rolling tracks. I noticed they were already drawn. "You'll do a perimeter check at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., she said. "Document wildlife, check the trail cameras, log any damage to the fences or signs. There's a supply drop every 2 weeks. Next one is the 18th. Radio check twice daily, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Channel 7 only. If you need emergency assistance, switch to Channel 3 and wait for acknowledgement before transmitting." She paused at the door. "Read the notebook tonight. All of it. Don't skip anything." The binder held maintenance logs, supply inventories, and a handwritten list on the first laminated page. The handwriting was careful and even, though the ink pressure varied. Some words pressed hard enough to dent the paper beneath. The list had no preamble. It started with a number. 1. Perimeter checks must begin exactly at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Set 2 alarms. Do not begin early, do not begin late. 2. During perimeter checks, stay on the marked trail. The trail is 1.7 miles. If you measure a different distance, return to the station immediately and do not complete the check. 3. Count the trail markers. There are 41. If you count a different number, return to the station immediately. 4. The refuge contains white-tailed deer, red foxes, snowshoe hares, and black bears in hibernation. You may see wolves at a distance. If you see any other large animal, do not approach it. Do not speak to it. Return to the station. 5. If you hear your name called while outside, do not answer. Continue your check or return to the station, whichever is closer. 6. Between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., keep all curtains closed. Do not look through the windows during these hours, even if you hear something outside. 7. You may hear knocking at the door at night. You may answer the first knock by asking, "Who's there?" through the closed door. If there is a second knock, do not answer. Do not open the door. Wait until morning. 8. The storage shed is 30 yards northeast of the station. The door locks from the outside only. Never enter the shed after 8 p.m. If you are inside the shed when it becomes 8 p.m., exit immediately and lock the door. 9. The main freezer contains 4 weeks of provisions. Check the inventory log daily. If you find an item not on the log, do not consume it. Remove it from the freezer and leave it outside the station door. It will be gone by morning. 10. Keep this list with you at all times. If you find another list, do not read it. Burn it in the wood stove immediately. I read it twice, then I checked the date on the log. The previous ranger had been here for 8 months. His entries were meticulous: temperatures, animal sightings, fence repairs. The last entry was dated October 29th. It said, "Perimeter clear, marker count 41, trail distance 1.7 miles, no anomalies." Below it, in smaller writing, "Don't trust the shed after dark." I folded the list and put it in my jacket pocket. The first week was straightforward. I learned the routine. 6 a.m. perimeter check took 43 minutes if I kept a steady pace. The trail wound through dense spruce and tamarack, past a frozen creek bed, around a kettle pond, and back to the station. The markers were metal posts painted orange, each one spaced roughly 200 feet apart. I counted every time. 41. I saw deer most mornings, their breath clouding in the early light. Foxes left tracks across the trail. Once I saw a wolf, just a gray shape between trees about 80 yards out, watching me. It turned and disappeared before I could reach for my camera. The station was cold but manageable. I kept the wood stove going and learned to bank it properly for the night. The radio worked fine. I called in at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., gave my status and signed off. The dispatcher's name was Carla. She sounded tired and never asked questions. I followed the rules without thinking much about them. They seemed like standard safety protocols, the kind of thing you'd expect in a remote post. The curtain rule was odd, but I chalked it up to wildlife. Bears sometimes pressed against windows, and it was better not to startle them or encourage interaction. On the fourth night, I heard knocking. It was just after 11 p.m. I was at the desk updating the log. 3 clear knocks, evenly spaced. I waited. The rule said I could ask who was there after the first knock. I walked to the door and spoke through it. "Who's there?" Silence. 30 seconds, a minute, then 3 more knocks, identical in rhythm and force. I didn't answer. I stepped back from the door and returned to the desk. My hands were steady. I wrote in the log, "Knock at door, 11:04 p.m., did not answer second knock, no further sounds." The knocking didn't come again that night. On day 9, during the evening perimeter check, I counted 42 markers. I stopped at what should have been the last marker, a post near the kettle pond. I turned and counted again, touching each post as I passed it. 42. I checked my watch, 6:17 p.m. I had started at exactly 6 p.m. The trail felt the same length. My legs knew the rhythm by now, but the count was wrong. The rule was clear. I turned and walked back to the station. The light was fading. I didn't run, but I kept my pace quick and deliberate. When I reached the station, I locked the door and checked the windows. All curtains drawn. I sat at the desk and waited. At 6:41 p.m., I heard something moving outside. Footsteps, I thought, though the sound was strange, too evenly paced, like someone walking a measured lap. They circled the station. I counted the seconds. It took 2 minutes and 18 seconds to complete the circle, then the sound started again. Same interval. I listened through 4 complete circles, then the footsteps stopped. I didn't open the curtains. I wrote in the log, "Evening perimeter check. 42 markers counted, returned to station immediately. Circling footsteps 6:41 to 6:51 p.m., 4 complete circuits, no further sounds." In the morning, I checked the perimeter at exactly 6 a.m. 41 markers, trail distance felt normal. No tracks in the fresh snow around the station, though it had snowed lightly overnight. I radioed Carla at 7 a.m. and gave my status. "Everything normal," I said. She acknowledged and signed off. The supply drop came on the 18th. A truck arrived at 9 a.m., parked at the gate, and the driver unloaded 6 boxes onto a hand cart. He didn't speak much, just handed me a clipboard to sign. I noticed he glanced at the station, then at the tree line, and loaded the empty cart faster than seemed necessary. I hauled the boxes inside and checked them against the manifest. 4 weeks of dry goods, canned food, batteries, propane canisters, salt, medical supplies. Everything matched. I stocked the freezer and updated the inventory log. While I worked, I noticed an item in the back of the freezer that wasn't on the log. A small package wrapped in white butcher paper about the size of a paperback book. No label. Rule 9. I removed it and set it outside the station door on the wooden step. I locked the door and returned to my work. At dusk, I checked. The package was gone. No tracks, no drag marks, nothing. The knocking came again on day 14, and this time I heard a voice. It was 1:37 a.m. I woke to 3 knocks. I lay still on the cot, waiting. Then a voice, muffled by the door but clear enough. "Hey, it's Martin. I left my gloves inside. Can you open up?" Martin was the name of the previous ranger. I'd seen it on the old logs. I didn't move. The rule said I could ask who's there after the first knock. This was the second knock. I stayed silent. The voice came again. "Come on, I know you're awake. It'll just take a second." I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then the footsteps started, circling the station 2 minutes and 18 seconds per lap. They went around 6 times and stopped. In the morning, I checked the perimeter. 41 markers. No anomalies. The snow around the station was smooth and undisturbed, though we'd had flurries during the night. 3 days later, the list changed. I woke at 5:41 a.m. and found a second laminated page clipped to the binder. The handwriting was the same as the original list, but the ink was darker, fresher. The heading said, "Amendments. Follow these in addition to the original rules." 1. If you hear footsteps circling the station, do not attempt to see what is making them. Count the circuits. If the count exceeds 8, go to the storage shed and wait inside until dawn. Bring a flashlight and the radio. 2. The trail markers may appear in the wrong locations. If a marker is more than 20 feet from where you remember it, do not touch it. Complete your check and report the discrepancy in the log. 3. During perimeter checks, if you see a person on the trail ahead of you, stop walking. Count to 30. If the person is still visible, return to the station immediately. Do not call out to them. 4. If the radio produces static on channel 7 during a scheduled check, switch to channel 9 and wait for 3 minutes. If no one responds, return to channel 7 and proceed as normal. Do not use channel 3 unless you are certain of an emergency. 5. The previous ranger left a red notebook in the desk drawer. Do not open it. If you have already opened it, burn it tonight. 6. You may find objects near the station door that you did not place there. Clothing, tools, food, journals. Do not bring them inside. Move them at least 50 yards from the station and leave them in the open. I checked the desk drawer. There was a red notebook inside, spiral-bound, about half full of handwriting. I didn't read it. I took it to the wood stove and burned it page by page. The paper curled and blackened, and I stirred the ashes until nothing remained. On day 22, I saw a person on the trail. It was the evening perimeter check, 6:04 p.m. I was a quarter mile from the station when I saw a figure about 60 yards ahead, standing at the edge of the trail near a marker. The light was dim, but the shape was clearly human. Dark jacket, hood up, hands at their sides. I stopped walking. I counted to 30. The figure didn't move. At 30, I turned and walked back toward the station. I didn't run. I kept my pace steady and didn't look back. I heard footsteps behind me. Not hurried, just matching my pace. I didn't turn. When I reached the station, I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me. I went to the desk and stood still, listening. The footsteps outside stopped. Then I heard them start the circling pattern. 2 minutes and 18 seconds, 8 complete circuits, then silence. The amendment rule said if the circuits exceeded 8, I should go to the shed. But the count had stopped at exactly 8. I stayed inside, curtains drawn, and waited. At 10:33 p.m., I heard my name. Paul. It came from outside near the east window. A man's voice, calm and even. I didn't recognize it. "Paul, you're doing fine. Just want to talk." I stayed at the desk. Rule 5. Do not answer if you hear your name called. "I know you're in there. It's okay. We all went through this." I wrote in the log, hand steady. 10:33 p.m. Voice outside used my name. Did not answer. Continuing to monitor. The voice stopped after 5 minutes. No footsteps, no knocking. I kept the wood stove low and waited for dawn. The winter deepened. By early December, the temperature stayed below zero most days, and the snow piled high enough to cover the bottom third of the windows. I kept the curtains drawn at night, followed the rules, and documented everything. The trail markers shifted. On day 26, I counted 41 markers, but 3 of them were in slightly different positions. One about 15 feet east of where it should have been, another 10 feet north. I didn't touch them. I noted it in the log. On day 30, I found a jacket outside the station door. It was a green canvas work jacket, heavy and worn, with a name patch on the chest. Marius, Martin's last name. I picked it up with a stick and carried it 70 yards into the woods, left it on a stump, and walked back. It was gone by evening. The knocking became regular. Every 3 or 4 nights, 3 knocks, then a voice. Sometimes it was Martin. Sometimes it was a woman's voice I didn't recognize. Once it was my sister's voice, though she lived 2,000 miles away and didn't know where I was working. I never answered. I logged it and waited for dawn. On day 39, the radio failed during the morning check. I keyed the mic at 7 a.m. and spoke. Refuge station morning check, status normal. Static. I waited. No response. I tried again. Refuge station to dispatch, radio check. More static, then a voice broke through, not Carla. A man's voice, calm and distant. Refuge station, we copy. Conditions? I hesitated. The voice wasn't right. The phrasing was wrong. Dispatch always acknowledged first, then asked for status. I checked the amendment rules. If the radio produces static on channel 7, switch to channel 9 and wait for 3 minutes. I switched to channel 9. I set a timer and waited. The radio hissed softly. At 3 minutes, I switched back to channel 7. Refuge station, morning check, status normal. Carla's voice came through, tired and clear. Copy, Refuge station, acknowledged. I signed off and wrote in the log. Radio anomaly at 7:03 a.m. followed amendment protocol. Successful contact at 7:07 a.m. On day 44, the storage shed door was open. I noticed it during the evening perimeter check just after 6 p.m. The shed was 30 yards from the station, a small wooden structure with a padlock. I'd locked it that morning after retrieving firewood. Now the door hung half open, the padlock dangling from the hasp. I checked my watch. 6:11 p.m. Rule 8 said never enter the shed after 8 p.m. I had time. I approached carefully. The interior was dark. I pulled my flashlight and shone it inside. The shed looked normal. Tools on hooks, firewood stacked against the back wall, a spare propane tank in the corner. But there was something else. A pile of clothes on the floor near the back, dark and crumpled. I stepped closer. It wasn't clothes. It was a sleeping bag, unrolled and laid flat with a pillow and a battery-powered lantern beside it. Someone had been sleeping here. I checked the rest of the shed. No one inside, no other signs of disturbance. I backed out, closed the door and locked it. I checked my watch. 6:18 p.m. I returned to the station and logged it. Evening perimeter check. Storage shed door found open at 6:11 p.m. Interior contained sleeping bag and lantern, origin unknown. Shed secured at 6:18 p.m. No other anomalies. That night at 11:41 p.m. I heard footsteps inside the shed. The sound was muffled but distinct. Slow, deliberate steps pacing back and forth. I listened from the station. The steps continued for 6 minutes, then stopped. At midnight, I heard the shed door rattle as if someone were testing the lock from inside. Then silence. I didn't go outside. I documented it and waited for dawn. In the morning, I unlocked the shed at 6:33 a.m. The sleeping bag was gone. The lantern was still there, switched off. I checked the battery. It was full. On day 50, a storm moved in. The temperature dropped to 14 below and the wind picked up to 40 miles per hour. Snow fell steadily from noon onward. By 4 p.m., visibility was down to 30 feet. I checked the amendment rules in the original list, nothing about storms. I decided to skip the evening perimeter check. Rule 1 said checks must begin exactly at 6 p.m., but walking the trail in whiteout conditions seemed more dangerous than the rules. At 5:58 p.m., I found a third page clipped to the binder. The heading said, Emergency Protocols, Severe Weather or Siege Conditions. 1. If visibility drops below 50 feet or temperature falls below -15, you may delay perimeter checks until conditions improve. Log the delay and resume checks within 2 hours of clearing. 2. During storms, do not open the door for any reason between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., even if you hear someone calling for help. Wait until dawn. 3. If the power fails, do not use the generator between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Use the wood stove and battery-powered lights only. 4. If you hear footsteps on the roof during a storm, go to the desk and remain there until the sound stops. Do not look up. Do not investigate. 5. Storm conditions may last several days. Ration food and water. The next supply drop will come when the roads clear. I read it twice and checked the windows. The storm was intensifying. I stoked the wood stove, lit 2 battery lamps, and checked my supplies. I had 3 weeks of food, 10 gallons of water, and enough firewood for 5 days if I was careful. At 7:14 p.m., the power went out. The overhead lights flickered and died. The refrigerator hum stopped. I waited for the generator to kick in. It was supposed to trigger automatically. Nothing. I checked the breaker panel. Everything looked normal. I decided not to investigate outside in the storm. I had light from the wood stove and the battery lamps. I could manage. At 9:37 p.m., I heard footsteps on the roof. Slow, heavy steps moving from the east side to the west, directly above the main room. I went to the desk and sat down. Rule 4. Do not look up. Do not investigate. I focused on the log in front of me and listened. The steps moved back and forth, irregular intervals, sometimes pausing for a minute or more. I counted. 43 passes over the next hour and 12 minutes. At 10:49 p.m., the steps stopped. I stayed at the desk. The wind howled. Snow battered the windows. I could hear the canvas curtains shifting slightly in the drafts. I didn't move. At 11:16 p.m., something knocked on the door. 3 knocks. I didn't respond. Then a voice shouting over the wind, "Open up, I'm freezing out here." A woman's voice, desperate and raw. I stayed at the desk. Rule 2. Do not open the door for any reason between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., even if you hear someone calling for help. The voice came again. "Please, I've been walking for hours. I can't feel my hands." I wrote in the log. 11:16 p.m., knocking at door, voice requesting entry. Did not respond per emergency protocol. The knocking continued. 4 times. 5. The voice shifted to sobbing, then to shouting again. "You're going to let me die out here? What kind of person are you?" I kept writing. I logged the time, the number of knocks, the tone of the voice. I didn't look up from the page. At 11:48 p.m., the knocking stopped. The voice faded. I heard footsteps in the snow circling the station. 2 minutes and 19 seconds per lap. 1 second longer than usual. The footsteps circled 13 times, then stopped. The storm raged until dawn. The power came back at 6:22 a.m. The lights flickered on and the generator hummed to life. I stood up from the desk. I'd stayed there all night, logging every sound, and checked the windows. The storm had passed. The sun was rising, pale and cold. The snow was 3 feet deep in drifts against the station walls. I unlocked the door and stepped outside. The air was still and bitter. I walked the perimeter of the station, checking for tracks. The snow was smooth and unbroken except for my own footprints leading away from the door. I checked the roof. No ladder, no way to climb up. I couldn't see any disturbance in the snow on the roof, but the angle was wrong and I couldn't get a clear view. I completed a late perimeter check at 8:33 a.m. 41 markers. Trail distance normal. I saw a fox near the kettle pond and 3 deer near the creek. No anomalies. I radioed Carla at 10 a.m. and reported the storm. She acknowledged and said the supply drop would be delayed by 4 days, possibly more, depending on road conditions. I confirmed I had adequate supplies. That night I found a 4th page. The heading said, Revised Protocols, read immediately. 1. If you have completed more than 50 days at the refuge, the following adjustments apply. Do not share these with anyone outside the station. 2. You may now see 2 versions of the trail during perimeter checks. One will have 41 markers, one will have 43. Walk only the trail with 41 markers. If you find yourself on the wrong trail, retrace your steps until you return to the correct version. 3. If you hear your name called during daylight hours, you may answer once by saying, I'm here. Do not answer a second time. Do not approach the source of the voice. 4. The shed may now be used for shelter between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. if you follow this procedure. Enter before 7:45 p.m. Lock the door from the inside using the interior bolt and do not open the door until 6 a.m. Bring water, a flashlight, and the radio. You may hear someone trying to open the door from outside. Do not respond. 5. You may receive radio contact on Channel 7 from someone identifying as previous ranger. Do not respond. Switch to Channel 9 and wait for official dispatch contact. 6. After 60 days, you will be rotated out. Prepare a clean copy of all rules for the next ranger. Do not include personal notes or observations. Do not contact the next ranger after you leave. I was on day 51. On day 55, I saw the second trail. It was during the morning perimeter check, 6:03 a.m. I was passing the kettle pond when I noticed a fork in the trail I hadn't seen before. Both paths looked identical. Packed snow, orange markers, the same width and direction. I stopped and counted the markers I'd already passed. 21. I looked ahead at the left fork. I could see 3 markers. Then I looked at the right fork. I could see 2 markers. I took the right fork. The trail continued normally. I counted markers as I walked. 41 total. When I reached the station, I logged it. Morning perimeter check. Second trail observed near Kettle Pond. Followed trail with 41 markers, no anomalies. 2 days later, I saw a person on the trail again. It was 6:37 a.m. I was halfway through the morning check when I saw a figure standing near marker 29, about 50 yards ahead. Dark jacket, hood up, facing away from me. I stopped walking and counted to 30. At 30, the figure turned slightly. I could see the profile. It looked like Martin, based on the photo ID I'd found in the desk. I turned and walked back to the station. I didn't hear footsteps behind me this time. When I reached the station, I looked back toward the trail. The figure was gone. On day 61, I received the rotation notice. It came over the radio at 7 a.m. Carla's voice. Refuge station. Your relief is scheduled for the 21st. Repeat. Relief on the 21st. Prepare the station for handoff. Supply drop tomorrow, weather permitting. I acknowledged. The 21st was 9 days away. I had completed 61 days. The revised protocol said I'd be rotated out after 60. Close enough. I spent the next week preparing. I cleaned the station, organized the supplies, updated the inventory log, and checked all the equipment. I wrote a clean copy of the rules. The original 10, the 6 amendments, the 5 emergency protocols, and the 6 revised protocols. I copied them by hand onto fresh laminated pages and clipped them into a new binder. I didn't include my personal logs. I packed those separately to take with me. On day 68, the supply drop arrived. The driver was different this time. A younger man, quiet and efficient. He unloaded the boxes, handed me the clipboard, and left without a word. I noticed he didn't look at the tree line. I stocked the freezer and checked the inventory. Everything matched, no unlogged items. On the evening of day 69, I did my final perimeter check. 41 markers, trail distance 1.7 miles. I saw a wolf at a distance, gray and still, watching me from about 70 yards out. I didn't approach it. It turned and disappeared into the trees. That night I heard knocking at 9:47 p.m. 3 knocks, then a voice. It was my own voice. "Paul, you need to stay. You understand now, don't you?" I didn't answer. I sat at the desk and waited. The knocking came again. My voice, "You can't leave, they need someone who knows." I logged it and stayed silent. After 10 minutes, the knocking stopped. I heard footsteps circling the station. 5 circuits, then silence. The new ranger arrived at 8:33 a.m. on day 70. Her name was Sarah. She was younger than me, mid-20s, with a practical air and steady hands. The district supervisor came with her and handled the handoff. I gave Sarah the keys, the radio, and the binder with the clean rules. I showed her the wood stove, the supply inventory, the perimeter trail, and the storage shed. "Read the rules tonight," I said. "All of them. Don't skip anything." She nodded. "The supervisor mentioned you did well here." I didn't respond. I picked up my pack and walked to the truck. The supervisor drove me to the gate. I didn't look back at the station. At the gate, I paused and checked my odometer. 1.7 miles from the station to the gate, exactly. I got out and counted the orange markers along the access road. 12. I got back in the truck and we drove south. After 3 hours, I stopped for gas and checked my phone. I had 47 missed calls from my sister. I didn't return them. I didn't tell anyone about the refuge. When people asked about the job, I said it was quiet and routine. I didn't mention the rules. I didn't mention the knocking or the voices or the footsteps that circled at 2 minutes and 18 seconds per lap. 6 weeks later, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single laminated page, handwritten in careful, even script. "To the ranger who comes after me. Thank you for reading this. The rules are accurate. Follow them without exception. You will hear your name. You will hear voices you recognize. You will be tempted to open the door, to step off the trail, to investigate the sounds. Do not. The refuge has been here longer than the station. The boundaries are older than the markers. What walks the trail at night was here before us and will be here after us. We are guests. We are witnesses. We are not meant to understand. When your rotation ends, pass the rules to the next ranger. Do not embellish. Do not add your own observations. The rules are enough. You did well. The next ranger will do the same. Burn this letter after you read it." I burned it that night in my apartment's fireplace. I watched the paper curl and blacken until nothing remained. I don't work at the refuge anymore. I got a job in the city. Something with regular hours and fluorescent lights and no windows that need curtains. But sometimes late at night I hear footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow and deliberate, circling the floor, I count the seconds. 2 minutes and 18 seconds. I don't open the door. I stay inside and wait for dawn.